for the latest on the Jazz, Utes, Cougars, and Aggies? Yeah, we've got you covered. This is Hans Olsen and Scotty G on 97.5, the Sports Zone.
All right, Hans and Scotty, 97.5, DKSL Sports Zone, final hour of the program. Steve Bartle, Ute Insider, kind enough to join us as we continue on with your Ute Preview Show. Hans out today. He'll be back with us tomorrow. Well, maybe. Lehigh loses a tough one in overtime, 35-34. Corner Canyon moves on to the state championship game. Lehigh ends up just 1 point shy of sending the game into double OT. That is a gut punch, man.
That's tough.
Absolute gut punch.
Oh, that's tough.
All right. So, Steve, let's talk about Colorado. If I would have hopped in the DeLorean, go back 88 miles an hour, back to July when we're down at Big 12 Media Days, it says, Steve, guess what? There's a good chance we might have BYU and Utah or BYU and Colorado in a Big 12 championship game. You would have said, all right, whatever you're smoking, puff, puff, give, man. Hand that over.
Oh, man. You are not kidding.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I think, and obviously both teams deserve all the credit for what they've done. But it's amazing.
Yeah.
What Colorado has done, because it was 2 seasons ago, just 2 years ago, they were the worst college football program. One of the worst,
yes.
bottom 5.
P5, G5, whatever. Yeah.
They were one of the worst of all time. I remember talking to people in the industry, in the recruiting industry, when you're talking about those Colorado players on that team 2 years ago, there were maybe 4 guys worth pursuing for a Power 5 program. That's the sort of lack of talent that they had in that program. And to now, to be in the Big 12 and be contending at the level that they are, it speaks to the job that Coach Sanders has done there.
Do we owe Prime a bit of an apology? I think I do, because we were all making fun of him last year, and now look what he's doing.
He's done a tremendous job of sticking to his beliefs, to what he knows, and not wavering. He knew what he was doing, and he deserves a lot of credit. And I think too is obviously when you have a talent like Travis Hunter and you have a quarterback like Shedeur Sanders, who's he's good. He is a good quarterback that just plays that position the right way. You have pieces to build with, and he went out and he built around. He believed in his guys, and here they are in the month of November, middle of November, ranked top 15 and competing for a chance to go to the Big 12 championship game. Just a crazy turn of events, even from a few months ago.
So you're tight with this team. You cover them on a daily basis. How hard is it knowing that, bowl eligibility certainly still very much in play for the University of Utah. However, coming off that loss to BYU, loss of 5 in a row, how hard is it to kind of shake off the cobwebs and get back at it? Or is it maybe that's what you need is a game against Colorado on the road and just be like, all right, forget about all this other stuff. We don't have time to worry about it. Let's focus in on this game and get back after it.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember, right? These are kids going through this still. And we're talking about this Corner Canyon Lehigh game. Unfortunately, that kicker's never going to forget missing that kick, and he's going to think about what he could have done better, what he could have done differently. And that's what we do as humans. When you put so much into something, when you invest so much into something and it doesn't go your way, you think of what could I have done better? What went wrong? How do we need to adjust? And I think for players up there, there has been certainly a bit of a lingering hangover effect, right? Because they put so much into that game and it didn't go their way. But there's also been leaders and players that have made it a point of emphasis this week to move on. That we are not playing on November 9th anymore. We are now looking ahead to Colorado, November 16th. That is who we're playing, right? And I think, Keanu Tanavasa, who does the Utah Blockcast with me on occasion, shared great insights this week on that podcast episode of talking about walking us through sort of the emotion that they felt throughout the game, after the game, and the importance of moving forward and looking ahead now. And I think, again, there is a point of emphasis that this is an opportunity, another opportunity to right the ship, to fix some things, and to get better, and to take this as an opportunity to right the ship.
Chris Peterson once told me and Hans that he's dealing with, and this is when he was the coach at Washington, he goes, I'm dealing with the dumbest demographic in the country. Men 18 to 22 years old. Yeah. They are morons, and they are overly emotional, and you never know what you're going to get from them from week to week. And I think the same thing, and by the way, I'm not calling this Utah team a bunch of morons, but I could see Colorado winning this game fairly easily, and I could see Utah going up there and just putting it on them and saying, enough's enough. And, and just being like, I'm drawing a line in the sand, and I'm playing for too much pride here. Yeah. So I could see it going multiple different ways. I just have no idea, without being able to crawl inside their brain, where they're at emotionally and mentally after that game. Because I, from my perspective, I can't imagine how hard that is.
Yeah.
Let alone these dudes that have to go through it.
No, absolutely. And I think, again, referencing the podcast yesterday with Keanu, he talked about there is excitement. There is excitement to take on this Colorado team. And, we had conversations, between him and I, and, it's a big point of emphasis that this is a game that can really change things for them, right? Like, this is a team that stayed committed to their process, that stayed committed to what they do, that's gotten them success in the past. They know it works. They're sticking with it. There's been obviously frustrations. There's been things that have happened over the last couple of weeks that, guys leaving the team, and that's unfortunate. But there is a core of this team that has stayed committed to the process and has continued to lead the way for Utah. And they're looking at this game, as an opportunity. They know it's going to be a challenge. They know, what Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, and that passing attack, what sort of challenge it presents. They know it's going to require their best. And, there's guys that are leading the charge this week in their preparation to be as prepared to potentially pull off that upset in Boulder.
So Isaac Wilson's the guy. Brandon Rose, his mom went on, was it Twitter or Instagram?
Twitter,
and essentially laid out a pretty gruesome injury that Brandon Rose went through and suffered in the second quarter and still played throughout the game. I mean, it goes to show you the toughness of that kid to be able to play with that type of injury the way that he did. But he's had surgery, so he's out. And Isaac Wilson gets another crack at this, knowing that there's no Brandon Rose behind him, knowing that he's the guy. Do you think that how do you think Isaac Wilson handles this, knowing that, you got nowhere else to go? It's just me, and you can't pull me after an interception. Let me go out and do my thing.
Yeah, I'll get to Isaac because I do think this is a great opportunity for him. But with Brandon Rose, right, let's talk about that situation, with the injury, right? It's a Liz Frank injury.
Yeah.
That's a tough injury.
It's a bad one. Yep.
But it's not like a broken arm. It's not like an ACL injury or an Achilles rupture where it's obvious, right? A Liz Frank, it's gruesome, but it's very small, right? It's pain in the foot. It's often misdiagnosed as a midfoot sprain, sometimes. And so, for Brandon, I know that this game, this opportunity meant a lot to him. And I know the team rallied around him because he stuck with it the last 2 to 3 years. He's had multiple opportunities to hit the transfer portal and to leave, and he didn't. He stuck with it, and that earns respect.
Yeah.
Right? That earns that sort of, when you get your opportunity, guys are going to rally around you because you've stuck with it, because you've been in these battles, you've continued to compete, even when things aren't going your way, even when things aren't, lining up for you the way that maybe we believe they should. He now got his opportunity. And I know for Brandon, he's as competitive a kid as can be. Again, sticking with a program for 3 years with no opportunity, with no playing time during that stretch, coming out as a highly touted quarterback, that's tough. That's rare to see a quarterback stick it out like that. And so it just, for him, I know that opportunity against BYU was a meaningful one, and I know that he wanted to give it his all for his teammates because they always stuck with him over these last couple years. So he's going to, I don't know what sort of conversations were had during the game. Obviously, a Liz Frank injury is tough.
Yeah.
But, there's certainly context to consider here. What did Brandon tell him? Did he tell him how much pain he was? That sort of stuff, right? And so, we're sitting here saying, well, it's a Liz Frank injury. How did you allow him to play? Did they know at the time? That's the sort of thing where you've got to. And
by the way, I hope nobody thinks I'm insinuating that because here's the, athletes are so wired into what they're trying to accomplish that they will be like, wow, that hurts. That hurts. And but they're like, am I gonna take myself out of the BYU Utah game? Right. Hell no.
Right.
Absolutely not. And you're right, that Liz Frank can get misdiagnosed like crazy. Yeah. And especially if you're the guy like, it feels weird when I'm stepping on this. This doesn't feel right. But is it painful enough to take myself out of a opportunity that I've been waiting years for? No, absolutely not. So I in no way, shape, or form am I saying that Brandon Rose was irresponsible by playing or that Utah was irresponsible by keeping him in the game because, frankly, nobody probably really knew the extent of it.
Exactly, yeah. So it's unfortunate now with hindsight. It looks really bad, but I think in the moment you have to understand just everything. There's just so much context to consider with that sort of situation. So anyways, now with Isaac, I think this is a great opportunity for him because, we've seen moments with him, obviously – going up to Utah State, we saw him play really well up there. Mm-hmm. Going on the road to Oklahoma State, getting that win, all things considered, not learning he was the actual starter till 20 minutes before the game, getting a couple days of practice as the starter, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and to go out there to Stillwater and get the win. That's a big thing for him. The struggles have come. He's taken hits. He's got some bumps and bruises. And for a true freshman, that can have a bigger impact than a upperclassman, right? Taking those hits as a quarterback can have a bigger impact on a true freshman than a guy that's been in the program for a few years. And for him, it can be tough to see the coaches give another quarterback an opportunity, looking for a spark with Brandon Rose, right? But this is now an opportunity for him, with now getting that time to take a step back, to evaluate, to see, okay, this is how he performed. This is what he did. We have talent on this team. I think taking that step back can be sort of a reset for him because he has talent. He clearly has talent. And I think for Utah, now making him the focus and providing him opportunities to make plays, tailoring the game plan to him, which we saw against Houston. Against that Houston team, you go back to that game. He started the game really well. At one point, he was 12 of 18 for about 160 yards. And so clearly he can produce and he can make throws. And so now it's just about building forward and getting prepared for Colorado. And I think for Isaac, it would not surprise me to see him come out and just sort of throw the ball around because that's the sort of competitive kid, kind of stick it to you type of mentality that he has. Like I would not be surprised if that's the case at all.
I actually am kind of planning on it a little bit because I think that there's not a lot of pressure on him.
Yeah.
Because you're like, you can bring in Luke Batari? Come on. Yeah. I mean, no offense to Luke Batari, but let me go out there and take control of this. And if I make mistakes, that's fine. Yep. Let's all live through it and get through it together. If he can cut down on the turnovers and just go out there and sling it, man.
Yep.
And just go out there and have some fun, I think that'd be good for him.
I completely agree. And I think, for Utah, you kind of want that gunslinger mentality right now. You want a kid that's willing to go out there and make throws. We've seen that from Isaac. Going back to that spring game, that was the big difference between Isaac and Brandon. Was Isaac was willing to take those shots. He was willing to make those throws, and I think for him, we saw that from Brandon last week as well. And I think that's so important for this offense right now is to take shots because everything has compacted towards the line of scrimmage, and it's impacted their ability to run the ball effectively. It's impacted just the space underneath for the underneath routes. But for Isaac, taking some shots deep, forcing them to respect that area of the field, getting the ball out quickly, I think those are going to be the keys for Isaac this week against Colorado. And obviously you got to be mindful of a player like Travis Hunter who's just dynamic and all of that. But But I think Isaac, just with his sort of mentality and knowing how competitive he is, I think this is a big opportunity for him.
If you had a Heisman vote, who would you give it to?
Oh man, I've been on that Ashton Jenkins train.
Same.
He's been unbelievable what he's done, because the running back position it's not what it was 5-10 years ago, right? And to do what he has, to be as dynamic as he is, and do it as consistently as he has. Like, he did it against Oregon, and he did it against whoever else is on the schedule. He's proven to be a truly dynamic player. Travis Hunter, I think the what he's doing is unique and it's special. It's truly unique. He's a unicorn, doing it on both sides of the ball as effectively and as dynamically as he has. But for me, I love what JT has done up there at Boise State.
Well, and frankly, if he was doing this at any Power 5 school,
it's no doubt slam dunk.
It's a landslide victory for him. The only thing holding him back is that he's doing it at Boise State.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, 2:25. One more segment with Steve, and then we'll cut him loose. Again, can't thank you enough for hanging out with us. We'll take a closer look at this Utah team, what the future looks like, what the transfer portal could look like. Already a couple of guys testing the waters as well. And I want to get your thoughts on the Pittman revelation on video as well. I thought there were some interesting things that came out of that. It's all straight ahead. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I present...
This is JJ and Alex.
The Utah Hockey Club general manager, Bill Armstrong, on the air here with us.
When you come watch us, it's all boiled into that. Like our players, we take great pride in who we've drafted. We want to bring the right players through the door. You're a workhorse. When our fans leave that game, they're going to be like, yeah, they got outmatched, but they wouldn't give. Like, they wouldn't give. They fought. They blocked shots with their face. They're bleeding after the game. They left it on the ice. They bled a little bit in Utah. They got a little Utah fight in them. And that's what we want our fans to walk out the door. And that's not going to happen every game, but it's going to happen the majority of games. And we want our guys to bleed. There's a spirit that we play with that we breed inside our players. And listen, we do background checks. We do, you name it. We go back to their 5th grade teacher and find out what they're like. We want the right people. That's a big part for us.
Catch JJ and Alex afternoons from 3 to 6. Presented by G2G Bars on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. And 5, the KSL Sports Zone.
It is your Cougars at 30 update. This is 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. BYU taking that 9-0 record up against the Kansas Jayhawks, who record-wise may not be great, but don't look past that offense. According to Jay Hill, they got their hands full.
The offense is very creative. They got great players. We faced them. They faced us. I think they'll be familiar with our scheme, and we'll be familiar with a lot of the things they do. It's going to come down to execution.
That is your Cougars at 30 update. Hey, snow season is upon us. Keep those driveways clean. Keep those parking lots clean. Go to GoPaveUtah.com. That's GoPaveUtah.com.
Number 1. Miss any part of the show? Every moment of every show is available in podcast form by searching Hanson Scotty on your favorite podcasting platform or online at KSLSports.com. This is Hans Olsen and Scotty G on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
All right, final segment with Steve Bartle before we park this car in the driveway. Utah getting set for a showdown against Colorado. Coming up this weekend, Utes trying to right the ship. They have not lost 6 in a row since, what was it, Lloyd, 1985, 1986? I know you and Jake Hatch went back into the archives, and I think they lost 7 in a row in either 85 or 86. Other than that, it's been pretty smooth sailing. There was a 5-game losing skid that Kyle had in one of the 5 and 7 years as they transitioned into the Pac-12. But other than that, this is uncharted territory for Utah. And they'll try to get things back on track. And what better way to do it than against Coach Prime and Colorado? When, let's be honest here. You didn't think you got calls against BYU? You're going to have a hard time getting calls against Coach Prime and Colorado.
No doubt about that. With that home crowd, it's an intimidating place. They can influence some things, I'm sure. I'm honestly... I'm interested to get out there to Boulder. Last time I was there was 2020, and that was... Oh, boy. Yeah. That was rough. I shouldn't have went to that game. Like, what are we thinking? Yeah. But, excited to see that place packed, and I think it'll be interesting to see this Saturday.
It certainly will, and you'll have complete coverage from the game.
Yeah.
Flying out tomorrow, I assume?
Yep.
Right on.
Heading out tomorrow, and it'll be interesting, that 10 a.m. kick, man. It'll come quick.
What? All right. What do you like least? An 8:30 kickoff or a 10 a.m. kickoff?
I think 10 a.m. I'm a slow starter.
Yeah.
I can go all night. I'm usually up late until 3, 4 a.m. anyways on Saturdays during the fall. So give me those late kicks. I always like them, and it's nice not having strict deadlines for certain things as well. That certainly helps. But yeah, give me those late kicks.
All right, I want to talk a little bit about the transfer portal because Utah has been, for the most part, in a pretty good situation in terms of the transfer portal. They've developed good culture there. You win a bunch of games. Guys don't want to leave, and they've treated those guys well. They've got their trucks. They've got a good chunk of change coming their way, so the collective has done its job. But when you start to lose games, then things start to turn a little bit. Let's say Utah, I don't know, let's just say they go 6-6. Do you anticipate that there might be a more heavy migration into the transfer portal than what we've seen in years past?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a pretty I shouldn't say pretty drastic, but I think there's a good chance that there's going to be a drastic change with the roster. I think there's regardless of how the rest of the season goes, and a big part of that is the lack of success this season.
Yeah.
But another factor in that is what's coming with the House versus NCAA settlement, what that means with revenue sharing, and also this being the last opportunity for players to secure NIL deals as we know them currently, where you're sort of free to generate these sort of NIL deals, where they're not being watched over. They're not, so I expect to see a lot of transfer portal entries. Not just Utah specifically, but across the country. I think there's going to be a large number of portal entries. I think there's going to be a great deal of transfer portal activity, and I think we're going to see some pretty surprising numbers in terms of NIL dollars that we see as well, because this is really kind of a last gasp opportunity for players to secure these types of NIL deals.
I think it's fascinating you bring this up because I was just talking to a coach last night. He's a basketball coach at a Power 5 program, and he said a lot of these schools are going to get a bump up in terms of this house settlement. He goes, some of us are going to have to cut back.
Yeah.
And players are going to be making less money because of revenue sharing now. And he said it's going to be interesting when we have to, talk to these guys and say, hey, sorry, we're going backwards now on you a little bit.
Yep.
And it's something that I hadn't really thought of, but yeah, it's a reality.
Yeah, no, it really is. And part of the settlement that's coming, there's supposed to be with the NCAA, you never know. But there's supposed to be a task force that reviews these third-party NIL deals now. And, these third parties are going to have to provide genuine detail into the sort of value that they're paying for and what they're getting from the player, because of that very thing, because some of these NIL deals have just become so big, and what are you really paying for other than the fact that they're playing for the school that you support, right? So I think that's what they're trying to clean up, and with revenue, it's going to, with revenue sharing, it's going to obviously give these programs a good amount of money to work with, to build their rosters, to provide these players, with financial compensation, and also to take that burden off of the fans. And I think that's a big thing that will help this sport, because the last few years have been really difficult for fans, because you're the primary source for a lot of these deals. Fans, boosters, that sort of thing have really been the people that have funded a lot of these collectives, and I think taking that burden off of them will be big. So that's not what we're talking about here, but
no, I think it's a fascinating storyline to all of this. The Jalen Glover announcement, did that surprise you?
No, it did when I learned about it.
Yeah,
which was the night before. But all things considered, right? With the way that this season has gone, I think most people saw it coming anyways. Right? He's been used sporadically. He came in as a highly touted recruit You beat out Florida State, you beat Florida, and expectations were through the roof for Jalen Glover coming in, and unfortunately just was never able to establish himself as that guy. And I think that for him, it's an opportunity. He loved his time here. He loved, the relationships that he built here. But I think for him, he's looking for a fresh opportunity and just a new place to call home.
Micah Pittman goes on and releases a video and says, I dealt with these injuries, and this is some of the situations I was dealing with, why I'm going a different direction and no longer with the team. And I would say, I want to be careful how I say this. I would say always understand that the truth is somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so take everything you see, whether it's a coach or whether it's a player, with a grain of salt.
Yeah, I'm with you there completely. And I think, for Micah Pittman, obviously things didn't go well here. There certainly could be a lot of things that lead to frustrating moments and experiences here for him because, you came here to play with Cam Rising, and 2 years in a row he doesn't get that opportunity to play with him. And, beyond that, I'm sure there were other things. But for him, to put his body on the line like he has still for this program, it deserves a tip of the cap to him and his time here. But for him, it'll be interesting to see what opportunities come. Obviously, it's been fun to follow him and what he's doing with his piloting license and all that stuff. But yeah, there's certainly a lot of things to keep in mind when you see an announcement like that kind of come out of the blue.
There's a lot of coaches out there, and I remember talking to one last year who his team appeared on the outside to be getting just riddled in the transfer portal. He said, "You know what? Yeah, we've lost some guys that we didn't want to lose, but a lot of these guys we've encouraged to go into the transfer portal." Do you think we might see a good chunk of that going on as well?
Yeah, I do. I think, there's certainly a core that Utah wants to hold on to, right? Mm-hmm. You recruit these guys for a reason. You bring them in for a reason. Obviously there are reasons for however many players are left on the roster now that you brought them in, first of all, right? But, as time goes on and things happen, especially with the season like this, it's important to identify the guys that can help you moving forward. And I think there will certainly be opportunities for Utah to say, hey, I think we need to make a change here. You'd be better served looking for an opportunity elsewhere. There will certainly be those conversations as well. When you have a season like this, obviously it's frustrating for a lot of people, right? First and foremost, the players, because of the amount of work that they put in. You feel for them the most because they're the guys putting it on the line each and every week. Coaches, obviously, putting in a lot of hours in prep, fan base and all that. So there's a lot that goes on and a lot of frustration goes around when you have this sort of season. But, for a program like this, it's an opportunity to sort of hit the reset button and to make changes, a lot of changes potentially, to kind of reset the culture. We saw this sort of with BYU last year, right? It wasn't the sort of season that they were hoping for. They went through some changes personnel-wise, and you get an off season going year 2 into the Big 12, and you're able to firmly establish a certain culture there, and you see what's happened there. And so, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who exactly all goes into the portal and what sort of personnel changes are made. But there will certainly be a lot of that will be, hey, go look for opportunities elsewhere.
All right. I got to ask. Cam Rising's not coming back, right? If he does come back, it's going to be with a different school.
Man, I thought for the longest time, the moment we found out that his season was over, that would be it, that was the last time we would see Cam in a Utah uniform. But the way that this continues to be talked about, I think the one thing I've learned is this season particularly is you never say never.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, we'll see. But I would still be surprised if he does indeed come back for another year, first of all. But even more surprised if that's at Utah next season. Obviously, it makes a lot of sense for him to come back, given the familiarity. And
the world of NIL, and make more money in college than he would the NFL.
Exactly. And still, Andy Ludwig was a big role in his success, and he's no longer here. Do you bring Andy back? You're not going to bring Andy back.
Yeah.
So, I just think there's a lot of factors with Cam that he's going to consider. And I would genuinely be surprised if he's back next year.
Hey, never say never on Andy Ludwig, Steve. Never say never.
Oh, he can't hear you. For some reason, you're not piping in his ear. But
Sorry.
He said never say never when it comes to Andy Ludwig.
Yeah, that's a good point, too. Never.
So I know we still have a few more games left, but the offensive coordinator position at the University of Utah, I got to imagine they'll open that up, do a nationwide search, and try to see exactly who's a good fit for what they're trying to build there. Bajakian, I don't anticipate is your long-term fit for that position, but I'm sure, if the offense catches fire, he'll be highly considered.
That's the thing right now is with him in that spot right now, this is an audition, right?
Yeah.
And for him, it's an opportunity to showcase his ability and potential as an offensive play caller for Utah. So you kind of have to keep him in mind. But this will certainly open up, I believe, unless the offense just, like you said, catches fire these last 3 weeks and or performing at just a level we haven't seen this season. But I think I just think, yes, this will open up. And, from there, once this search does open up, I think Morgan Scalley will have a pretty prominent voice in this sort of process. Again, just because of, where he's at with his, head coaching and waiting tag. He needs to have a pretty prominent voice in this search because he's the guy, that's up next for this program. And, that's the plan that they have in place is for him to succeed Cal Whittingham. And, regardless of when that comes, Morgan needs to be involved in that process. And I think, from there, you've got to figure out what sort of identity you want to have, what you want to embrace. I think Utah, they've found success with their run game. They found success with that tight end group. But can that still work in the Big 12? Do you believe it can? What sort of changes do you need to make? You need to really figure out what sort of identity you want to have. And with Morgan, whenever he does take over, he's going to want to have, his input in that as well.
That's a good point. Hadn't thought of that. Steve, you're the best, man. Appreciate it. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate you, man.
Good stuff, man. Steve Bartle, you can catch his stuff at KSLSports.com. Great Utah insider, great analysis all season long, and will continue throughout the end of the season as well. All right, we'll wrap this thing up next. Get you ready for JJ and Alex straight ahead. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Hey, bro. You hear us every day with our crazy opinions.
Hey, what you doing?
Well, now, it's time to hear from you.
Hey, great show.
Download the KSL Sports app and fire off your thoughts with the call-in tab on the bottom of your screen.
Your show is fantastic. It's the one that captivates me the most.
You can tell PK to stop singing.
Cheap bangs! Cheap bangs!
Let Jake and Ben know what you really think of the Jazz. Woo! Tell Hans and Scotty about your favorite barbecue spot or what color of tie JJ should be wearing on TV. The best entries will be played on the air. Download the KSL Sports app now and hit the call-in button to let your voice be heard.
I think you guys do an incredible job.
This is 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. You're locked on to Hans Olsen and Scotty G. That's right. Yeah! On 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Hans and Scotty, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Make sure to nominate the youth sports volunteer that you know for the Hercules Hero of the Week. Submit your nominations at kslsports.com/contest. Then listen every Thursday afternoon, like today, to JJ and Alex as they will announce the winner and do another one again next week. It's all sponsored by Hercules First Federal Credit Union and Beehive Mills. Speaking of Beehive Mills, my wife is now out of town for the next few days, which means we will be loading up on the Beehive Mills because myself and my two boys that are still in my house are going to be living off of Bar W beef and Beehive Mills. God bless America right there. All right, great show. Lloyd, usually I ask Hans this, but I'm going to put you on the spot. Looking into the crystal ball, what happens on Saturday? 10 a.m. start. You're 9 a.m. pregame, huh?
9 a.m. pregame.
9 a.m.
I appreciate that.
By the way, I asked Steve what he prefers, 8:30 or 10 a.m. He goes, give me the 8:30 p.m. I think you and I are of the age where give us the 10 a.m.
Thanks for making me feel old. Yeah.
I know. But
I'll take it any day. You know what? I love those 10 a.m. games. I think they're great.
I do too. I'm all about it. The earlier, the better.
Heck, you get if all the games were at that time, you'd get your morning after pod a lot earlier.
I got my 1 o'clock kickoff in Logan, Utah State and Hawaii. I could not be happier. Well, I could if it was 10 a.m., but 1 p.m., yes.
Poor Hands. I tell you what, nothing ever goes his way.
I know, right?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing ever goes his way. 8:15, 8:30, you name it. Poor guy.
Yeah.
Jeez, what a rough life he has.
So what happens on Saturday? Utah get the win? You know what? I'm going to say right now, I think Utah wins. I got a weird feeling about this game. The Utah beats Colorado.
They're beatable. I mean,
they are beatable.
They are so beatable. I just don't know what they're going to come out like.
Do it.
You know what? Well, hey, I did pick Utah. Last week when I think you were out, you had a game to call, or you were traveling
on Friday. Yeah, I was traveling. And
I said Utah 20-17. I gave Utah a 20-17 win, and we saw that one turned out. I think they do. I think they'll pull it out. I think he rights the ship and he avoids that 6-game losing streak that hasn't happened since 1986. That'd be pretty. You know, a coach that has taken this program to the highs of highs, and that 6-game losing streak's right up there with the lows of lows.
Oh yeah.
And to think about that, and is considering where this season started, that's got to be a tough thing for Utah fans.
And the expectations that we had for this season.
I know we keep saying that. It's like the expectations and where Utah is versus where BYU is, and the same thing with Colorado.
Oh, yeah.
This whole league has been almost flopped upside down, except for Kansas State. They're up there where they were, where they were supposed to be. But outside of that, this thing's been flopped.
Yeah,
so.
This league is drunk. You look at a team like Oklahoma State that we anticipated was going to be good, and they're just dreadful in this conference. So crazy year for sure.
I think they pull it out, but it is going to have to. They are going to have to score 24 points.
Yeah, I'd say 28.
24.
I'd say 28 is probably my benchmark. Yeah, because I think Colorado's going to score 24 plus. So I think 28's got to be the magic number, and that'll be interesting to see if they can get to that.
Yeah.
All right, that wraps it up for us. Big thanks to Steve Bartle. Big thanks to Christian Cox. Also, big thanks to you for listening. Fun one today. We'll be back at it tomorrow, Friday edition of the show. Ron McBride will join us, as we'll have another Football Friday for you coming up tomorrow from 12 to 3 right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.